So this is actually our fourth citizens workshop slash conversation. And these are sort of just quick little shots at various topics. We did, geez, I can't remember what we did already. But we have a series coming up, the next three, the Borough Code, and then the next one, 2 weeks, will be about duties and obligations of council members. And then the one after that will be about citizen empowerment. And that's a real favorite topic of mine because that's where the rubber meets the road. And I really think that's important for people to understand the power that they have and to understand this thing that we banter around too much, empowerment, right? It's a word that just is overused and it means nothing really when you think about it. And I'm going to do some screen sharing here for you guys, but tonight is about the Borough Code. So, we're a nation of laws. And so, of course, the highest law of the land is the Constitution and, federal laws and then state laws and statutes. And there are county laws. And then there are what we call in Pennsylvania, the laws of political subdivisions, right? And these are townships and boroughs and classes of city. So, we're surrounded by a variety. So we are a borough. And so what is Big Beaver? Do you know?
It's a borough.
Big Beaver's a borough. Chippewa?
Township.
Township, as is White Township. So West Mayfield and Big Beaver, we fall under the Borough Code. That's our most immediate set of laws that we follow. White Township and Chippewa follow a township code. There's this thing for township, and it specifies that they are governed by township supervisors. We are governed by council members. And then there's the Beaver Falls is actually used to be a third-class city. Do you know what it is now?
No.
They went through this thing called home rule last year, and it actually was a couple-year process. And so they actually became they're no longer considered a class 3 city. They are a city, but they've defined their own government. So they have a mayor and they have, I don't know, it's like commissioners they have, I think that they call them or something. So under home rule, it's this kind of interesting thing in Pennsylvania that a community, a political subdivision could, by vote of the people, decide to do their own thing. And they have to put a charter in place, basically like a constitution and a structure of government. And then they follow it, do their own thing. West Mayfield could do it if we wanted to. We could do away with all council and have commissioners. We could have a borough executive if we wanted. There's a difference between why Beaver County has county commissioners and why Allegheny County has a county executive is because Allegheny County is a home rule political subdivision. So it's kind of an interesting thing. But my point is that we're all governed by these sets of laws, right? And so for us, it's the Borough Code. Right. And so this is the thing that I think every citizen should understand, every elected official should understand. And I'm going to share my screen here. And I always say, look, the simplest thing ever when you are thinking like, well, what, the Borough Code? How do I access the Borough Code? Well, you know what you do? You Google it. Just Google it. Right. And you will get there. That's the simplest way. If you just type in Pennsylvania Borough Code into whichever search engine you use, you will get there. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see, which one do I got? So I Googled Pennsylvania Borough Code, and the first thing that popped up here was this thing of Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs. That's actually mentioned in the Borough Code. And then down below that, the next thing is actually from the Pennsylvania General Assembly, this thing, Title 8, PA General Assembly. Well, Title 8 is the Borough Code. A few years back, I had something here all about it. Here it is. So there was a consolidation of all of our laws and stuff, recodification. And so the state put our Borough Code into this thing under what's called Title 8. So when you ever see Title 8, that's our Borough Code right there. Okay. And so when I want to find it, I go to Google. And I go to, where are we here? Okay, so I will click on usually the Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs. I'll click on it, and here's why. Because you can look at the Borough Code right here. It says PDF format or HTML. So PDF format, if you're not familiar with that, that looks like this, right? These are just basically screenshots of documents. And you can't click on this stuff. You can search through it, but you can't click on it, right? So that's why I like to use the HTML version right here. And I click on it and I come to, okay, so you see this thing here. Now you see everything that's in blue here. Now these are clickable links. So if there's a topic in here that you want to kind of look up, you can just click on that link and it'll take you right to the section. And so you don't waste a lot of time on that sort of stuff. Okay, let me just check the, oh, okay, just 3 of us still here. Okay, so does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so I took the liberty of pulling out, this is chapter 10 of Title 8, and this is all the stuff about the mayor. Now, in Pennsylvania, a borough mayor does not have power. And that's what a lot of people don't, are kind of shocked to know that. In cities, that's very different. But we have what's called a weak mayor system. And it's always been this way, always. I think you can see it that's defined, I think, in the Pennsylvania Constitution, I believe, a weak mayor system. So the real power resides with council in a borough, and council makes the decision. And the president of council is the real power person of boroughs, because that person runs the meetings, appoints the committee chairs, signs contracts, signs off on financial things, and so forth. But the mayor is kind of interesting office because it is the sort of the ceremonial head of state. And so, of course, we have Licia Cogley, who is our mayor and who's been very upfront and very face forward to the public and the community and what she does. And but the borough code gives her certain powers. She can marry people, actually, by the way. And she has to inform council that she's going to perform a marriage ceremony, but she can actually perform a ceremony. She can also, it says right here, marriage ceremony, she could charge a fee. And the other powers is she can deliver oaths and affirmations. She can swear people into different positions they have. For example, Bob Tate, who is our interim code enforcement officer, he had to be sworn in. Well, the mayor, I don't know who swore him in, but the mayor could do that. So that's one of the things. In an emergency, the mayor can also declare a state of emergency. She can put martial law into West Mayfield. And it's kind of interesting. It says here under emergencies, can you see this here on the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Right here, it says she shall have the power to prevent and suppress mobs, riots, and unlawful and tumultuous assemblies. I just find that funny. I can see Lacey out there with a bullhorn, a big club. So the mayor does have specific powers here. So the borough code lists these duties. One of the things that the mayor does in terms of legislation is the mayor can break ties. So in other words, if council ties on a vote, the mayor has the choice to break the tie. Does not have to break the tie because it's listed as may. May is a conditional conditional verb saying that if she chooses, she could break the tie. So that's really the only thing that the mayor, I think, can handle legislatively. Other than that, the mayor is just ceremonial and could do a lot of great things in the borough. And in fact, it even says in here that the mayor shall give a report to council as to the state of the borough from time to time. Chapter 13 of the Borough Code talks about taxation and finance. And I wanted to bring this up because our budget process is just about to start. Mm-hmm. And so I made a post about this not too long ago, and I'd mentioned that, in fact, I mentioned this specifically, but I shared what the process was, that in October last year, there was a workshop, and that was a public meeting. I think it's misnamed workshop because the borough, I don't know if it's the borough code or a state statute says that a public, maybe it's the Sunshine Law, says that workshops, the council could have a workshop on how to, I don't know, run a meeting, for example. And those workshops, they're just educational things. They're not public meetings, right? So they don't have to be advertised in a newspaper, that sort of thing. So to call our budget drafting process a workshop, I think is a bit of a misnomer. But it happens in October. So Pat should be putting out a notice that there will be a special meeting where the council members will get together and they will say, hey, what do we expect to bring in next year? What do we expect to outlay? How do we want to craft a budget? How much do we put here with this committee and that committee and so forth? And so that produces a draft budget. And then that draft budget comes to the November meeting, and then that gets voted on as a preliminary budget. And then, there's horse trading that goes on. And then that budget, the preliminary budget, gets voted as the final budget in December. And so in the Borough Code, it actually says, I could come down to it here somewhere. Oh, here we go. I have it. So preparation of budget. It says beginning at least 30 days prior to the adoption of the budget, a proposed budget or annual estimate of revenues and expenditures for the ensuing year shall be prepared in a manner designated by the council. The proposed budget shall be kept on file with the borough secretary and be made available for public inspection by the borough secretary for a period of 10 days. Now, this is what's interesting. If you can see here, section 308 right here, it says, notice of proposed budget and penalty. Notice that the proposed budget is available for inspection shall be published by the borough secretary in a newspaper of general circulation, except in boroughs, yada, yada. And so this thing should be, Pat should put a notice in the paper that we have this proposed budget and it's available for inspection for 10 days. And then if you look down here at subsection B, it says failure. Any borough secretary who fails or refuses to give the notice that the proposed budget is available for inspection as required shall, upon conviction in a summary proceeding, be sentenced to pay a fine not exceeding $100 and costs of prosecution. This is on the powers of the borough, right, to provide for the common good of the citizenry. And it says here in this section to provide for garbage and other refuse stuff. So, and we do that. Council contracts with a service that picks up the trash. And I highlighted a section here, which I think is rather interesting. It says that council can enter into agreements with other political subdivisions in accordance with existing laws in making joint purchases of materials, supplies, or equipment, and in performing governmental powers, duties, and functions, and in carrying into effect provisions of the law, yada, yada, yada. So basically it says here that our government has the ability to connect with our neighbors and say, hey, you have a snowplow and we don't, or you have a grass cutter and we don't. Can we contract with you to do this? You know what I mean? That's totally permissible by the borough code, right? To enter into these kinds of agreements. Now, why don't we enter into agreements with other municipalities? More, I should say, because it's happened in the past that I'm aware of. I don't know. I don't know why that is. But the borough code says that our government has the authority to do that. The borough has the authority to contract with other agencies for police and fire protection. So what this says is it's within the power of the borough if the borough wanted to contract with, and it doesn't say whole or in part, it says it's possible to contract with other outside agencies, neighboring municipalities to help provide these services. So that is a thing. I just wanted to point that out, that this spells out, this borough code, a whole lot of things that I'm not sure people know about or think about or understand the magnitude of what is allowed by the borough code, right? I think it's very significant to understand that. If you look down at this, this big list of things here, you will see out here all these different subsections. And a lot of it is just not applicable to West Mayfield. It's applicable to perhaps other boroughs. State College is what I consider a city, but it's not. It's actually a borough. And so they follow the borough code, but they're so big, they have things such as wards, and wards have to be handled at election time in a different way than the way we elect our officers and all kinds of things like that. So this is really, I think, an interesting read to just go through here and look at the duties of council here, how council is organized, the powers that council has. And again, you can click out here to these hyperlinks over here, and then you can go to those specific sections. A controller is listed in here. Here's tax collector Kathy Brewer, our tax collector. Her office is specified in the borough code, her powers and duties. The mayors, we talked a little bit about that. Treasurers and secretaries, the solicitor. So Joe Budasek is our solicitor. And so what that means is he's actually one of these officers that has to be appointed by the borough for legal purposes. So if anyone sues the borough, Joe is the person who represents the borough in a court of law. And that's actually defined by the borough code. And of course, police here. So one time when we had a police force, the mayor was the head of the police force, right? If you've been around the borough for a long time, you remember those days. Well, the borough code allows a community to do away with their police force, to contract outside, and so the mayor no longer has a police force to deal with, right? So council then becomes that negotiator, with the police services and so forth. So let's see what I got. I'm just going to scroll down here. Corporate powers, taxation. We talked about that. Contracts. Let's get down to interesting stuff here. And it spells out like if the borough wanted to add land to the borough or decrease land in the borough, there's a way that's spelled out. Sidewalks. A lot of this stuff is like crazy into the weeds with stuff, but it's actually really, really important stuff. I'm going to get down to some interesting parts here. Airports. We could have an airport if we wanted to. We're allowed. Shade trees. Now, this is interesting. So the borough code allows for the creation of a parks and playground, a committee, parks and playground. And one of the duties is they can be offered is for shade trees and throughout the borough, right? Shade trees. And the borough very specifically spells that out. This whole what a shade tree is, and how a Parks and Rec committee playground committee could handle that sort of stuff, and care and custody, control of shade trees. Cemeteries, we could have a cemetery if we wanted. I'd really like to know what you guys are thinking about this borough code. Are you familiar with it? Have you ever sat down and tried to read through it?
Yeah, the mayor, it says she can declare disaster or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we are out of our power for like 3 or 4 days, does she have the right to say, hey, you're opening up the fire department and give people charging stations? No ifs, ands, or buts.
Well, as I read the borough code, yes.
She can?
As I read the code, yeah.
Okay.
Now, it's like a lot of things, the devil's in the details. We have an emergency management coordinator. That is spelled out in the borough code, that every municipality will have a emergency management coordinator. And do you know who that is for us?
Bill Heaton.
It's Bill Heaton. And Bill Heaton is a paid position. He gets $100 a month to be the coordinator. One of his duties is to prepare material like generators and things like that, and also to have a team that could assist, and also to have an emergency management plan, which I don't think I've ever seen. Maybe it's somewhere. I haven't seen it. It should be a public document. It is a public document. You could file a right to request note for it. to see it, but I don't know if we have it. But so back to your question, I would think that the mayor would work with the emergency management coordinator on an issue like that, right?
Yeah, it was just because we had power outages now, what, twice in the last year that's gone more than 24 hours. And it's like everybody's trying to run around and get electricity, charge their phones. And
Mhm.
it's like, why don't they open up the fire hall, put some water out, some crackers or something?
Yeah,
Why
I
is that
mean,
never even thought of, brought up, suggested?
yeah, you're absolutely right. So now that you know that the borough code gives the mayor that kind of power, then that's a conversation to have with the mayor now, not when there's an emergency. Now,
What? Yeah.
you know what I mean? So you can say like charging, right? So a simple charging station where there are plugs,
Yeah.
USB plugs, and all, the ports for everybody's little doodad. Very important. Because the old, who has an old phone anymore? Those things ran. If your power went out, your phone still worked. Well, that's
Right.
cell phones. You can use your cell phone typically, but you still have to charge your cell phone eventually, right? But a lot of the new phones, the cordless phones, they don't work like the old ones. If there's no power, your base unit doesn't work. Right.
Right.
So electricity is extremely important just for basic communication today. So to have a station on hand where people could charge their phones, and there could be a phone there if someone needed to call relatives, medical,
Right.
whatever. Very important. So at a basic minimum, a charging station should be set up, I would think. But that's a conversation that the mayor we should have with the mayor. Now, the mayor's going to have a forum coming up on October 5th. That might be something to bring up at the forum. We're Concerned Citizens is sponsoring the forum. That's something to bring up there with the mayor. Yeah, that's a
Even
good
just
thing.
even like a big thing of coffee so somebody can get warm or whatever, know.
Warming station, cooling stations.
Charging station.
Right. Yeah, those are really important things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now another thing too, I just want to point out along those lines that the borough code there says that the council is empowered to do more than just repair broken sewer pipes and plow the streets. That one of the things that they are empowered to do is to think about public safety in a wider sense, and also quality of life issues. So things like playground equipment or activities, parks and rec activities, right? Totally within the purview and the power given to council by the borough code. It's in the statute. It's in the statute. That's my point.
Yeah, there's a thing on the news today that like the schools were relying on the PTO and them getting the donations to update the equipment. And they just had to vote that the school should be responsible for the updates of equipment. So is that going to work for the boroughs too?
I don't know. I don't know.
Our playground equipment is nasty.
Yeah. Well, it's something that everyone should be weighing in on and working towards. But council does. My point about the borough code is that it actually invests this kind of stuff with council. It's in their wheelhouse, right? Just to put it frankly, it's in the wheelhouse. So if council says, we're going to abrogate, we're not going to deal with this, whatever, they're choosing not to, exercise that part of their authority. And what's really interesting about the borough code also too is that it gives broad authority to council, broad authority to work on issues, to come up with things that to address a wide variety of issues. But we have about a minute left here, and I don't want this just to cut off. But so I'm going to wrap this up. And I try to make these short for a reason, so we can just this isn't a burden on our time. But one of the drawbacks is that we want to have more conversations about this. But hopefully we will in the future at council meetings and on the Concerned Citizens Facebook page. That would be great. So look for an edited version of this a video. And I want to thank you all for being on our 4th workshop. And so I look forward to seeing you at our 5th and our 6th one coming up.
Alrighty.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for being a part of this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.